Hello and welcome back to the channel. And I wanted to talk about why the job you applied for may not actually exist. Give you a little bit of background. I have been in manufacturing supervision, um, production supervision, production manager, plant manager, all sorts of different levels when it comes to that for over 30 years. I've worked for private firms. I've worked for um, government contract companies. I've also worked for public companies for at least 20 years. And there's a lot of things that go into hiring that is actually impacting some of the jobs that you may see available. One of the things I want to talk about is from a corporate standpoint, even as a plant manager with profit and loss responsibilities, I was not able to hire anybody without approval. And that usually went up to at least a VP level, if not even the CEO in some situations. And so what can happen is, you know you need some people, so you have to get permission, and what you do is you get what's called a verbal agreement, or not necessarily called that, but that's what it is. They say, yes, you can go hire somebody. But if you've ever been in business long enough and worked in a corporate thing, you know something called a hiring freeze. When people start getting a little bit nervous about what's going to happen in the future, and especially if the CEO has some sort of like personal mandate that they want to be the CEO who never laid anybody off, um, that creates hardships. And so you learn to play this game that as soon as you get permission to hire people, you put in those requisitions. Because once those requisitions are official and they're put in and they're entered into the system through HR, those are exempt from any sort of hiring freeze that is put out there in most corporations, anyways. And so usually what ends up happening, especially when you're talking about entry level positions, um, maybe because it's the other side of this is using temp hire processes. And the reason why a lot of companies will do that is because it is easier to hire. You can get somebody in quicker that way, as opposed to what I was talking about before, getting the first off the verbal approval, and then you put in for the actual job requisition, and then, taking a couple weeks for it to be entered in, posted, and all of that sort of thing. It's quicker to get somebody in as attempt to hire. Also, it gives you a longer time to get to know, or in a lot of places they call it evaluate, um, the employee, depending on what your focuses are. If you're looking for somebody who can come in and actually like do the work and hit the ground running, that's usually pretty quick to be able to tell if somebody can do that. But if you're looking for somebody that you want to make sure that they've got the right characteristics to train, that does take a little bit longer. So when you do temp to hire, you almost have 6 months of evaluation time versus 3 months. And because most temp agencies, they have a requirement of roughly about 3 months worth work. Some will have up to 6 months. Um, and the reason why companies will usually run out that whole thing, because if they want to hire somebody early, they have to pay a fee to the temp agency. So what'll happen is, so say I need somebody on the dock. So I get approval to add somebody, a shipper guy on the dock. So what I do is I get that requisition in, and at the time of the requisition, the system will put that and post that job out on company websites, Indeed, LinkedIn, all that kind of a thing. But I'm not actually going to look at any of those resumes that come in. I'm going to go with the temp to hire. So I've talked to the temp agency, told them what I'm looking for. They bring somebody in. We start kind of evaluating, give them the orientation, all that kind of thing, and we work with them. And so usually it's going to be about 3 months before we actually make that decision to have that person apply for that job on the company website, and then we can hire them in. And so this is what I really wanted to talk about was that, a lot of jobs that you see, especially some entry level jobs, there's probably already somebody that's in line for that job. And I would get so frustrated with HR that they would put these postings in such a way that people would be applying for it. I'm like, that's doing is wasting that person's time. Because sometimes, you bring in a temp because you need them, and it could be 6 months before you even get approval to bring that person on. So you've already got your candidate, you know who you want to have that job, and that person's already there. So that would be a frustration that I would have is I'd talk to HR and say, look, just I know you got to put it somewhere because there's government laws and all this kind of stuff. Plus, you've got your uh, HR system that uses this application to through the whole process. But I said, let's not make it, let's not broadcast it because that's just wasting people's time. And not only is it wasting people's time, but there's not necessarily a closing of the loop. Person puts in their application, nobody is looking at it because nobody's even thinking about anybody actually applying for that position anymore because they already have a candidate for it. And so that's one of the points I wanted to make out about why there are job postings out there that aren't legit job postings, that somebody's actually done that. And to me, HR is really kind of the crust of where that thing has gone wrong. They need to be more diligent in not posting any job like that if you've already got somebody in line for it. Because it's much easier to, if a temp is not working out, it's much easier to get rid of them than it is to get rid of somebody who's actually been hired by the company. Even when you're still in that probationary period, it is still quite difficult to terminate somebody. Most HR, especially at public and corporate level companies, they don't even want to think about the possibility of having to talk to a lawyer. So they want to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and so you have this the process that you have to go through, and it's not comfortable for the employee, it's not comfortable for the manager, and so that's why a lot of managers will go to the temp to hire route. So quite honestly, if you are looking for an entry level job, in probably just about every industry, you would be more it'd be more advantageous to go to temp agencies and versus going to applying to jobs online. Um, temp agencies, you can tell them that you're only interested in things that are temp to hire, and they'll do what they can. I mean, every temp agency that I've ever worked with has really been, they've cared about their people. I mean, to a different degree. Everybody has different examples. One company, the lady, she would come in every time somebody started new at 6 in the morning, and she would be there, and just a sweet, wonderful lady, and she'd make sure they got situated. She'd come by every week to check on everybody. So you have that extreme, and then you have other extremes where unfortunately they just see everybody as a paycheck, a number. Um, and those are not the kind of temp agencies that would stick around for very long because I didn't like how they were treating the employees. But so yeah, that could be a reason why the job that you applied for ghosted you because it really never existed. And it's just the unfortunate side effect of corporate life, but also the side effect of it's just easier for somebody to just do it that way versus being a good human being, essentially, and making sure that they're not putting out uh, job postings that aren't really there. That's not fair and good to anybody. So, thank you for watching. Hopefully, I hate that that may have discouraged some of you, but I wanted to give you that piece of information and my suggestion that if you're looking for an entry level job, it's probably better to um, go through attempt to hire than necessarily go through and search job postings all day long. Okay. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.